I'm going to talk a little bit about colour mixing today, so that's one thing, but also keeping sketchbooks. And I did say actually if anybody wanted to, could do a bit of sketching outdoors if you wanted to do that. It's slightly better than it was this morning. It was really dull this morning, but it looks a little bit brighter. So, yeah, I'll do the colour mixing in a minute. So sketchbooks, I brought quite a lot of sketchbooks in here, so if you want to look at any of these, you're very welcome to. I'll just show you some of the ones that I tend to use. For a long time I've used these kind of A4 size sketchbooks, and I quite like the ring bound ones because it can kind of fold around and draw like that, so that works quite well for me. So this one is reasonable strength paper. I've got others that are slightly thinner paper and slightly like this one is the same sort of size, but it's a little bit lighter. It's less, the paper's thinner, so it's easier to carry around. So I quite like those for that reason. I've shown you these brown ones that I use quite a lot of. So these ones I've been using for quite a few years. These are really like a sort of, I think they're really intended as scrapbooks really. I don't think they're particularly intended to draw on. But I quite like the paper, and I like to be able to just draw on a toned surface and with pens or watercolours or something like that. But again, A4 size is a nice size, it fits in my bag easily, I can carry that around. Over the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot more painting, particularly going up to London to paint. So I've gone a bit smaller with sketchbooks because they're lighter to carry and they'll fit in the bag. So sketching is quite often, like this one is a soft back one, which isn't ideal, but they're nice and lightweight and small. These ones are a little bit better in that I've got something to rest on when I'm sketching, so I can sketch people in the tube and things like that when I'm going along. So that size I really like, and I tend to just use the white ones for these. But there are all sorts of different books you can get. This one is more intended for watercolours. It's slightly thicker paper, and it's this nice landscape format, so I can kind of paint right the way across the page. So I quite like these. These ones got like rounded corners, and this size is nice for just sticking in a pocket if I'm going out for a walk and just take a little bit of pens or watercolours or something. So very portable. It's quite nice. You can also get different colours, like working on black paper. That's that one, and square shapes, different shapes, and there are also some very long, narrow ones. So it's like loads of different range you can get. So I've left all those there if you want to have a look at those. I get a lot of my sketchbooks from Sea White, and when I was at art school we had this make sketchbooks, so I've always rather liked them. So I've been using these for a long time. And I can order these sort of wholesale prices, so if anybody wants any, I can get hold of these. But what I do need is to have enough to make a big order.
How much would they tend to be?
Well, I suppose something like that. Let's have a look, see if they've got those. They'd be a bit, yeah, definitely cheaper than this. Well, for this sort of quality of paper.
Yeah.
I think, just trying to look for individual ones. Probably about £5, something like that.
I quite like the medium one in that ring binder. Not the tiny one, but the next one.
Yeah. What they say A5 size. Yeah. Again, they'll be maybe just under £3 or something like that. Depends which one, which paper and things like that. But you can have a look through here. If there's anything you want out of here, and when I've got, it might be weeks, months still I've got enough to order, but I'll order stuff. This is, they're like an educational supplier, so I think quite a lot of the schools use them. And I use them when I run mental health projects, so get a budget for materials and buy stuff into the project. So I've got an account with them. It's quite enough. Quite like to buy stuff myself as well as anybody else who wants it. So I'll leave that there if anybody wants to have a look through there. But they've got all sorts of things. It's not just sketchbooks. They're different things. Like Sharon wanted a couple of these plastic folders, which I find quite useful. things like that. Quite a good way of just carrying your stuff around.
What are they called again, Paul?
Sea White is the manufacturer.
Sea White.
Sea White, yeah. They're down in Brighton. But
That's
yeah,
cheap, that's good. Oh.
yeah, I think yeah, it's good stuff. They've got some good stuff in. I mean, not all of it is as good as you get with some manufacturers, but a lot of it is good enough. I use a fair bit of their stuff. So I'll leave that there. Okay, so a little bit on colour. So, this is really a revision of what I did last year, so you might remember me doing this. I do this about once a year. So with colour mixing, when I've got new students, this is what I advise students to use. This particular kind of colour wheel, these particular ideas. And all comes out of the book. It comes out this wheel comes out of this book. So this wasn't around when I was at art school. They had a slightly different way of explaining colour. I went to college, but I found this, the way that he explains it in this, quite a nice, not straightforward way, an understandable way. So the basic idea is that you've got these primary colours, which are colours you can't mix a red or a yellow or a blue. They just are. So that's why they're called the primary colours. But within that, each of these primaries will have a slight bias towards one of these secondary colours. So colours that you can mix, like greens, purples and oranges. So you'll find that if you've got like a set of paints, some of the blues you've got might be slightly purpley, like an ultramarine, and some of the blues will be slightly greeny. So cerulean blue, or something like Prussian blue, or phthalo blue, or manganese blue, they're all very greeny blues. So you'll find that each of your colours will have a slight tendency towards one of the other colours. And it's also quite useful, I think, even thinking about colours like browns. It may not be that, if you're thinking like you've got a brown, and it might be more of a reddy brown, or it might be more of a greeny brown, or a slightly purpley brown. So just trying to identify some of the traits of the particular colour. So it just gives you that much more ability, and just gives you more strength and what's the good word for it. When it comes to mixing, so basic idea is that if you wanted a nice bright green, for instance, so these are the brightest greens, you'd use a greeny yellow, which is this one, lemon yellow, and you'd use one of the greeny blues, and that will give you the strongest range of greens, or the brightest range of greens. So that's this line here, which is this and this. That'll give you that line there. These are a great thing to make for yourself, to create for yourself, create a little colour chart. If you haven't done this already, it's a really good idea. And equally, you know, always have these colours in your palette, or have something similar. You know, have a greeny blue and a purple blue. Have two each of the primaries. And with these and some white and maybe a brown, you can mix pretty much most of what you need. There'll be one or two colours you can't get, but you can get most of what you need with these. So that's your bright line. This line here is a much more subtle range of greens. So that's using a yellow that's got a little bit of red in it, and a blue that's got a little bit of red in it as well, so sort of crimsony blue. So that gives you this range here. And then the same applies to purples and oranges. With the purples, you've got a nice strong range of purples here, using these two. If you're using these two, you're getting something a little bit more like brown as you're coming across here, and then it goes back into blue. Equally, I mean, quite a few paint boxes don't include a black. So the idea is that you create a black somehow. So if I was going to do that with these, maybe I could use perhaps some blue and red, a little bit of all the colours really. So if I just use the blue, maybe that bit of blue as well. That's a slightly darker greeny blue, and a little bit crimson. So that gets me to purple. And then if I use a little bit of yellow, that will slightly brown that down a little bit. And it's not really quite black, it's not pure black, but it's probably dark enough, black enough for watercolour. If I thin that down, that's a little bit purpley, so perhaps a little bit more yellow with that to make it a grey. Something like that. So you can create, using all you know, a little bit of all the primaries, you'll create more neutral colours, like greys and beiges and things like that. So it's as well as being able to create most of your colours, it's a great way of just learning colour mixing. Just restricting yourself to a few colours like that will really push you to experiment with colour mixing. Is that enough?
How did you get the grey one from? There's like a grey-white one that I know.
What, here?
Yes.
It's probably just more water, so yeah, if I go with something more like that, perhaps a little bit ultramarine blue. I tend to use crimson quite a lot, but you could probably use this one. If we use, tell you what, let's try the cadmium red just for a change, and a little bit of cerulean blue, which is a slightly greeny blue. Yeah, and that gets quite a nice grey. Yeah. So that can be quite good. I think things like actually green and red will make quite a dark colour. So again, crimson and green, again, is almost like a black. So yeah, perhaps try those first and then go for other colours if you need them. When you've got things like quite a lot of the ready-made greens, and that I think I'm not sure if that's a ready-made green or not. Let's just try one. So if I get a ready-made green out, that's not too bad actually, but some of them are almost look a bit too artificial looking. That's not too bad, but what you can do then is add little bits of red to them, just soften them down a little bit. They will be far too bright otherwise. Yep.
When you're going out painting, what's your preference of your colour setup? Because what I've got today obviously is a million colours that are pre-made, and I wouldn't normally have done that, but just because there were such a nice selection of them. But do you tend to use like a pre-made orange or green or things like that, or do you try and stay away from that?
I sometimes do. It's a bit arbitrary, to be honest with me. Sometimes I do.
Yeah, it just depends on the shape.
Yeah, it depends what tubes of colour I've got. Yeah. Sometimes I get a given colour, so I think, well, I might as well use that. Use it.
But you're not like strictly against, because I sometimes see people who use like, they're strictly like 6 colours.
Yeah, no, I'm not. No, I think sometimes, I mean, certainly when you've been painting for a while, and if you want to work really quickly, you don't know what a shortcut will get you somewhere, and what colours. Yeah, so there's certain colours I just tend to like, and I tend to use quite a bit of. I use quite a lot of crimson, a lot of ultramarine, quite a lot of raw umber. This is more in oils and watercolours. I don't know what I would do in watercolour because I don't really use watercolours that much. It tends to be quick sketches, so it's anything that's in the paint box really. Yeah, so, and yellows, again, I do experiment a little bit. Yeah, so sometimes, I didn't used to use ready-made orange colours, but sometimes I do, because I seem to have acquired some somewhere.
I hear people say like burnt umber, it always means a burnt umber, and a it's like a couple of the brownie ones.
Yeah, burnt umber is quite useful for getting, I think the thing with mixing all the darks here is, sometimes it gets just too purple. It's hard to get it to go any darker. So I find something like burnt umber and blue, say ultramarine blue, will make quite a nice sort of dark, almost like a black, grey. They're really nice for making blacks and greys. It's a quick way of making blacks and greys.
Which one?
Things like raw umber or burnt umber and ultramarine blue. So I use a lot of those. I mean, lots of artists just tend to work out what works for them and what their favourites are. So I don't want to be too prescriptive, but it's more just to get you through the learning stages really, or through the confidence building stages. But really, once you're there, then whatever works. Some colours will be a lot more transparent than others. So if you're working with watercolours, there's certain colours that will probably be better for watercolours because they're less opaque.
Mm.
Okay.